welcome to That's What Speaks. Today is Friday, January 29th, and this is episode 309. I'm Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. Thanks for coming over in the snow. Normally, I would not advocate for you driving in the snow, and I understand if you were like, no thank you, I'll just have a remote visit today. But I do appreciate it. I was out earlier, and everything seems to be fine. It's just like the beautiful, very dry, very big, fluffy snow, which is why we're in this room, because that way I can look at the snow. And also it can give us its light, which is very, very kind of it in these winter months. Okay. So yeah, thanks for coming to visit. I enjoyed so much about hearing about your sumo and other citrus exploits over the last few weeks. I love it. So excited to see you excited about citrus. What else? Okay, so this week's episode is going to have, it'll definitely have shameless self-promotion. There'll be a shop update February 1st. It's going to have knitting. It's going to have a lot of stitching. And, and have prizes. Let's do prizes. Oh my goodness. So if you're new to the show, you can skip ahead just to get a better flavor for it. But we do Patreon prizes. We do Patron prizes. And I say Patreon. It's anybody who contributes financially to the podcast via Patreon, PayPal, or Ko-Fi. And I draw those once a quarter. So this will be for the final quarter of 2021. We have 3 prize winners. Drum roll, please. First prize, here are the prizes. So you all get the same prize this time. This designer just released another amazing fabric not collaboration, just another amazing fabric run. And I love her design work so much that I was like, I got excited about her new release and decided to dive into the stash and make you some bags as well. Those bags will be coming probably mid-February. And just, there's lots of cats involved. Just FYI. I know I've got some cat ladies. Some cat folks. Sorry, there was something stuck in the top stitching. So anyway, so you get one of these. These are my large wedge size bag. They're very useful. And the first prize goes to Beth McDonald. Woohoo! The second prize goes to Colleen. Your email address involves the words SIO or the letters SIO. I don't know your last name. And the Laura Ambrose. So those are our prize winners. If you're one of those humans, please contact me. The best way is via email. I started to say email because my email address begins with an A. Or you can contact me also. It'll be like the email address that your stuff comes from me or that you sent PayPal to. Or you can contact me at fatsquirrelfibers.com. There's like a contact so-and-so form, and that'll get to me as well. And I just need your actual full human name, especially Colleen, because I don't have your last name, and your shipping address, and I will get those out to you. Did I find one of last quarter's prizes in with some things when I was like, yes, I did. I forgot to send one of the persons from last quarter their prize. But if that's you and you haven't just like burned down your subscription to the podcast, it's coming. I just my brain is good for a lot of things, but not great for some others. So yay, thank you to patrons of the podcast. You're super awesome. Everybody send them a big psychic high five. Bam. For making it possible for me to do this nonsense. You're the best. Okay, so those are prizes. Okay, what else should we talk about? Okay, so before we get into knitting, maybe, I'll just talk about briefly about something I read between last time and this time that has... There's a book called The Husbands if you don't know about me, what I typically do is I am a big audiobook listener. Um, because my job involves a lot of like repetitive and sort of tasks that I need to be there but don't need to be 100% there. I find that listening to podcasts or audiobooks is super helpful in making my day a little bit more interesting. So this is the book The Husbands by Chandler Baker, who I saw she's written another one book, maybe two. She is author of The Whisper Network. And I saw her kind of touted as the feminist thriller writer, which that's interesting. But neither here nor there. This review will contain spoilers, but not like big spoilers, just kind of like general spoilers. So if you don't want to hear about them, I'll put timestamps. You can just skip to the next section. But let me just discuss this book. This book needed a label. So I'm going to give you the label. If you are currently in a relationship where you feel like you feel like you are shouldering more of the kind of emotional labor, the unseen labor. Like if you know how many rolls of toilet paper in your house, but if you asked your partner, they would have no idea. If you know when your child's next 3 doctor's appointments will be, not like off the top of your head, but they're in your phone, but maybe not your partner's phone. If you know exactly what your child will eat, but your partner really is mystified that they won't eat beans, even though the child is 15 years old and has never eaten beans in their life. If you're and I'm not saying, and I would put on top of that, and you're in a place where you're not really ready to like tackle the, you're just not really ready to tackle that in your relationship. Like, you know that there are things you can do to make it better, but they just seem just too much. Maybe you're just tired from knowing how many rolls of toilet paper are in their house, and you just don't have, like, the brain is cut up into all the places where you can hold that information, and like, you've got too many places where, like, how much toilet paper, how many boxes of macaroni and cheese, how many, what are we having for dinner for the next week? Like, if those places are all just, like, there's no other place for you to, like, really process that with your partner, maybe, okay, definitely do not read this book, because it will make your Google history contain things like marriage counseling, and because I don't even think it's that great of a book. Like, let me just say that. Like, you don't need to read this book. It's not a, it's very much sort of like the counter to A Step for Wives. So, we're from the perspective of the men being the ones who are manipulated in some way. And I don't think that is a big giveaway, because it's pretty obvious, like, that's what's happening throughout the book, even though the main character annoyingly has no idea, because apparently she's never read The Stepford Wives or, like, existed in culture. So it feels like there are sometimes when and like, let me also preface this by saying I have never written a book. So this person has written an infinitely better book than I have. But at the same time, like, so I felt at some point I was like, is this a book that she has written primarily to exercise her thoughts on this, like, emotional labor topic? Like, is this really just a vehicle for her to, like, work through some stuff about where she's feeling with this stuff? Because somebody called it a slow burn. I don't even think I would call it a slow burn. It was just, like, it was made, I don't even think there was a burn involved. Like, it was just, like, just too, but yet at the same time I had to finish it because I really did need to know, like, how the specific logistics of this worked out in the book. So yeah, That's all I have. I guess that's what I have to say, which is really not a lot. But it is funny to read the read comments or reviews about this book because they kind of range from like, I don't understand what this woman's problem is. Her husband is not that bad, to like, to things being like, oh my gosh, how does she not know what's going on? But then other people like counter to the first person being like, oh my gosh, 100%. I feel her pain. So it's just interesting to get both of those like reactions. So yeah, it was. I would never read it again. It was not. I don't even think I would say it was enjoyable. It was actually kind of unpleasant, but not because of the book. Like that was clearly just. I mean, I don't think the book was that great, but it was also primarily just because I was like, oh, I wasn't ready to confront like reality. I was reading a murder mystery for escapism. Maybe it should have been like, hey, so there's your warning. That's my sticker. I'm not an Oprah sticker. That's a fat squirrel sticker that says like, hey, heads up. If you're not ready to deal with this kind of stuff, then don't listen to this book because it will make you mad. And then like mad the whole time you're reading it because like that is the like main crux of the book is her frustration. Although I will say, okay, this is an actual spoiler. So don't, I mean kind of. Not really. A little bit though. Oh my gosh, my hair stick just fell out. Oh well, I don't know where it is. This was actually the thing that I take away from the book that was actually, this is the thing I'm taking away from the book. Okay, so this is spoilery. So of course the whole point of like Stepford Wives is like they make the wives into something that is completely malleable and perfectly suited to this specific group of husbands' wants and needs and desires. So essentially that is what is happening here, but of course it's with husbands. And it basically makes them, it's not a feminist text. This is the reason I would say it's not a feminist text, is because it reverses the pressure and the weight of the emotional labor completely onto the other gendered. In this case, they're all hetero, I think, cis hetero folks. So it just completely places the burden of all of that labor onto the husbands. So it's not an equal distribution of that labor. It is a complete just flip-flop of the labor. But this is one thing that really was like painful. At one point there's like this moment with one of the daughters of the husbands, and there's like this crux of like, well, you know, oh, this is what's going on, we have to tell everybody, and she's like, no, I know, but I just like my father better this way. And it's like this really painful like, oh, like it was the only point of the book that I actually like resonated emotionally. It was very like, ooh, like not emotionally, but like in a deeper place of like not my own troubles, but just like, oh, when we don't have the onus on partners to have equal distribution of that emotional labor, it really does. It's not just that it puts the burden, again, traditionally in a cis hetero relationship. It's not that it just puts the burden on the woman, but that denies the male partner the complexity of a relationship with their children and with other people that could happen if they were more responsible for these kind of like bits of minutia that are the things that make us a person. Do you know what I mean? Like this minutia that kind of like coalesces into understanding another person's needs and being supportive of their needs and their movement through the world. And so that was the point of the book that I was really, and it's like this like 2 sentence. I mean, it's like this very tiny little passage, but it really did leave me with like a, ooh, so it's interesting. I didn't see anybody else mention that, but maybe it's because it's an actual spoiler. But yeah, I don't know, man. Sticker warning. Okay, what else? Okay, let's just keep doing like logistical stuff. So there's going to be a shop update. Again, I'll put a bump so you can bump ahead if you're not interested. There'll be a shop update, fatsquirrelfibers.com, on February 1st. Can you believe that nonsense? So Rifle Papers has recently put out a new collection, and I had to have it. So there'll be sweater and large wedge. This is a cotton canvas. It has been laundered because I do really love the look of their canvas when it's been laundered. It kind of gets a very soft, especially their black tends to get this like nice warm texture to it. So it's that, you can see it. But I love it so much. We've got poppies. We've got this beautiful, just a beautiful color range in a nice sort of, I don't know what we call it, more of a botanical floral. And let me just discuss, I love the zippers so much. My zipper supplier, I use a special kind of zipper that does not, it's available in a huge range of colors if I'm willing to special order them in quantities of like over 100, and like the lead times, especially now, can be 8 to 10 weeks. And I'm just not in a place to like plan that far ahead in my life. I mean, hello. But my supplier has started carrying some more colors that I love. And this is one of them. It's this like, it's a goldy, greeny kind of like, anyway, it's just such a great color. You're going to be like, would not even care. But I love it. Such a good color. And then, so those will be large wedge and sweater. And then we'll also have in my biggest bag, so like you're making sweaters, you're making blankets. I also have these awesome, sort of like printmakery looking, I love, right? Just a simple texture. They have a great, they are a cotton linen canvas, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They're a cotton linen canvas. And again, they have a nice texture that's pebbly and like toothy, that is not just a touch texture, but also a visual texture. And I find them to be quite enjoyable. So if you're ready to move into springy stuff, or if you're like, no, you got options. So again, that'll be February 1st, and then there will be a Mega Cats February 15th. Oh, she's such a good designer. The bag of fabric is in the other room. I'm like, I gotta show you. And like, no, I'll just show you next time. Basically what it is, I took a quilt in to my local quilt shop. They work with a long arm quilter. I've never had anything long arm quilted, but this was I did a test sew. Oh my gosh, Rebecca Danger. Do you remember Rebecca? Sorry. Do you remember Rebecca Danger? She's doing quilt patterns. What? Are you excited? I was. I immediately offered to test sew. And it's a great pattern. It's especially good if you are like a beginner-ish kind of quilter, or like, because it comes in all the sizes you would like. It's like throw to king. And the blocks are like really big. They're big blocks. So for me, I love that because it requires less of that ability to visualize how something is going to come together, because there are fewer moving parts. Do you know what I mean? Like, the sample was shown in solids and it looks great. So she has it so that you can do it like in 4 colors or something. So that really simplifies it. Maybe it's 5. Or, you can do it whatever combination you want. But even if you go and do it with like fat quarters or something where you're gonna have a lot of variety, it's just much easier to visualize like how to put that together, how to like not have repeated fabrics in like a pool or a clump. It's much easier to do that if you're working with those big blocks. For somebody like me who's not to that level of just being able to like look at something and like know how it's gonna look as like a cohesive piece. And I know like you can make your design walls, you can like use just like, flannel sheets that you can like pin up or like even put on your curtain rod or whatever. And you can use that as the design wall. I just haven't kind of gotten to that place yet. I mean, it's possible it'll be in my future. But that was all to say that I took my quilt in to be quilted, because I don't think I can quilt a queen size quilt. Like, I can definitely do a twin on my machine, but I cannot have I need a machine, an long arm for that. And I don't have one of those, which I'm very okay with. But that is all I'm saying. When I took it into the shop, they had the cutest fabric. And I had seen the line online, but then when I went in, it was just darling. So, oh, I'm excited about it. But so like, while we're talking about quilt stuff, let's talk about quilt stuff. So, okay, so I'll just show you this. This is, I showed you last time, I had that like panel with like the bunnies and the hedgehogs and the woodlandiness. So my mom had given me like a combination of panels and like quarter yards, half yards. And it's made by, it's called Hedgerow, that's the line. And then it's made by Makower, it's Makower. And several folks have it online. Fabric Worm has it, Hawthorne has it. I mean, I've seen it, you know, look on Etsy, lots of folks have it. But so that's what I used for my quilt. But then I had extra fabric. I had purchased some additional panels. The panel I think I showed you was blue, and I bought it in gray as well. And so I had extras, and I thought, oh, I think I have enough to make a quilt for my tabletop. And oh, you know what? I'll just show you a picture because I took a picture, and I'll put that in here. So what I did with this one is I just used the leftover panels that I had, and I had a bunch of half square triangles that were left from part of the quilt. Like, one of the ways you can make flying geese is to have, which are like those triangle blocks, is to have like leftover half square triangles. And I just stitched them up as I was trimming them. So I just had like a big stack of them. So what I did is I kind of just incorporated them into some like strip piecing, some kind of modern quilting techniques. You can just, you know, improv quilting is like a great way to look that up. Strip piecing, improv quilting is a way to kind of just make your own combination of fabrics and things like that, where you're not like adhering to any specific pattern, but you're just you're improvising. And so I used those and like some leftover like bits and bobs. So you can definitely see, you know, places where I have leftover half square triangles. And you can see the panels that are in there. Since it's for my dining room table, what I did is I made it so there's 6 panels essentially, or 6 rows of panels. And so what I did is I made it so that half of them are facing one head of the table and half of them are facing a foot of the table, so that it's not all one way or the other. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it. I got that all pieced up, and it was kind of fun to do. I had done a small piece, which I'll show you in a minute, that kind of got me like, okay, I think I can do this on a bigger scale. And it was really enjoyable. And so I have the backing piece together, because again, I just kind of, it's not as pieced as this, but it's a little bit more pieced than a regular back, because again, I was just trying to use up what I had. And then I'm going to quilt that, hopefully, before you come visit next time. But so yeah. And if you're new to the show, what I often do is make a quilt top for my table in my kitchen, my dining room, where we're at right now. You can see it. You just look down and it's right here. So my Christmas one is still on, even though my Christmas decorations are all taken down, but I haven't quite made this one go away. But it's not, it's on the like just foliage side, so it doesn't look super Christmassy. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. So there's that. And then I'll show you kind of what I have definitely, a while ago, I took a Craftsy class about improv quilting, and I got really interested in the techniques of improv quilting, because just like improvisation, like in terms of stand-up or like, you know, performance, there are certain techniques that you can use to help guide and shape the performance, or in this case, the piece that you're making. And so you can learn about a lot of those. There's also, you know, several great books. Let me just look at what they are, because I should be able to tell you, even though I checked them all out from my library, so I don't have them here to show you. But The Improv Handbook for Modern Quilters by Sherry Lynn Wood. I believe she was the Craftsy class. I'm not entirely sure. A book that I really enjoyed was Inspiring Improv, Explore Creative Piecing with Curved Strip Slabs and Something Else. That was by Nicholas Ball. Those were the two that I would say were my favorites that I looked at. So those are great places to start. And here is the smaller piece that I worked on. So here, I'll show you. I had made some flying geese from these fabrics, but I wasn't quite as in love with them. I originally intended to make them like an actual like fuller size quilt, but I pieced, 20 or 30 of them and just didn't love them. I think I didn't love that many of them. Like it was a little bit, whatever. I just didn't love them. So, but I did like the fabric and obviously I didn't want to waste it. So I decided to incorporate them into, again, this kind of improvisational, scrappy look. So I'm making this for a friend. And right now I am I'm doing some big stitch quilting, which is also new to me. I don't know that I really like it yet, but we'll see. I know that I like hand sewing. I'm not entirely sure I will like hand quilting, and I think that's kind of fun. I thought, oh, well, it'll be the same. If I like hand sewing stuff, I'll like hand quilting, but it's a very different feel to the process. So we'll see. Right now, I don't love the process of it, and I have tried it both with a hoop and without, and I think I am a no hoop gal. But we'll just kind of see how this goes. It's good to test it out on something sort of small, and I could always just, hand stitch this one and then machine stitch the other, or, you can do a combination of the two. You can do some machine quilting and then just kind of punch it up with a little bit of hand quilting. And that might be more of my flavor. We'll just kind of see how it goes. But yeah. One of the things I want to talk about, because I had a lot of folks who commented on the garments that I showed last time. And so I know that for myself as a knitter, like that is definitely how I identify primarily. I was never interested in sewing because it felt like it just didn't have the things I liked about knitting. Like I like that knitting is portable. I like that I can sit and do it with like my partner while we're watching TV. That it doesn't require me to like be in a different space. It's quiet, so I don't have to like have a machine running. Like there are so many things about knitting that I really like that didn't really translate in my mind to sewing. But now that I have been sewing more, I'm becoming more interested in hand sewing. And in part, this was inspired by on Instagram. They are Books and Cables, and they do a lot of hand sewing on garments, which, to be honest with you, I just had not even thought to do. But it's definitely like sparked something in my little brain. And I've recently purchased this book. It's called Hand Sewing Clothing, a Guide by Louisa Owen Sonstrom. And it was available through Etsy. I guess it's published through Louisa Mary. If you're interested in sewing, but you're just like, I want something that's portable. I want something that I can do in the evening and like not be segregated away from my family. Or I just want something quiet so that I can watch television and do it, or, whatever. I would really encourage you to think about the possibility of hand sewing. You can always start a small project, but even hand sewing your clothing. I had this kind of thought in my head that it wouldn't be as sturdy or things like that, and that's just not the case at all. And yes, it's slower, but like, hi, we're all knitters, so like, we get it. I think that's like not as, like for people who are machine sewists, that's definitely like the biggest like hurdle is that it is slower, but I mean, hi, we actually make the fabric that we're wearing. Here you already have the fabric, you just have to piece it together. But I have really enjoyed this book, I'm on page 40. And it contains projects. It contains, let's see, it's 171 pages plus a glossary. And I think that's pretty rad. I've not gotten into the garments yet, so I have no idea. They are not going to, it's not like pattern pieces that you cut out. I'm assuming it's going to be in the school of like a zero waste where you're self-drafting and using like proportions and measurements. But right now I'm just sort of in the like forward, I guess you would say, to the book where you're talking more about the reasons to do hand sewing, you know, things like that. And it has been so enjoyable. So I just want to read to you the benefits of hand sewing as she lays them out. Control of the materials as you handle it and of the garment as you realize it. Like, how lovely is that? And it is very true. You know, one of the things about machine sewing is that it can feel very rushed because, well, I shouldn't say feel very rushed. It can feel kind of intense because you have to be really on when you're piecing things together, or you're going to have like lots of time spent ripping things out, which is not bad, but it is time consuming. And most of us agree it's not the most fun thing to do. Number 2, inconspicuousness where desired and decorative beauty where desired. So it allows you to do more invisible stitching or more decorative stitching. Number 3 is precision. I mean, it's much easier. Any person who's done some hand sewing, it's much easier to keep points lined up or things like that if you're hand sewing versus machine sewing because you have much more control. Number 4 is portability. Hand sewing can come with you on the subway, on a camping trip, to a picnic beneath a tree. Number 5 is affordability. With a few dollars, you can buy all the basic tools needed to stitch beautiful clothes. Even high-quality tools are much less expensive than a basic sewing machine. Very true. Very true. Independence from a need for electricity or other fuel. Number 7, slowness. I love that that's a benefit. I really dig this little author. She's great. Number 8, silence. You can stay up late or wake early to stitch, and you'll never disturb sleeping housemates with the whine of a machine. Or for those of you who live in apartments, I know that's sometimes a concern. I've seen people post about that. Freedom from machine problems. No more thread tension fiascos. No more poorly timed bobbin depletions. No more unexpected machine breakdowns when a major sewing deadline is nigh. Number 10, agency and ownership of the creative process and product. I feel like as knitters, we definitely understand that one. Number 11, openness to slower, lovelier techniques for a slower, lovelier final product. Again, that concept that we really need to move into of having things that we dearly love that we're going to take care of for a lifetime versus something that we're just going to toss away. Deepest love for your work. We definitely understand that. Absence from ready-to-wear offerings. Super important for fat people. Super important for anybody who doesn't fit the standard size range. Tall folks, short folks, folks who have more or less appendages than one sees in the normal range of clothing. Simplicity and sophistication. Increased productivity. That's interesting. Because you can do it anywhere, anytime, without major setup. So I would liken this to kind of like people who do a lot of spindle spinning over wheel spinning and say that they actually are much more productive because, you know, they can spindle spin while they're making dinner or, you know, while they're waiting on the phone or what have you. And that would definitely be the case with hand sewing. Ease of revision. When you're sewing with one strand of thread, stitches can be pulled out and re-sewn quickly without breaking the thread. Beauty of the hands, human touch. Isn't that lovely? So I would say she's a very thoughtful, I mean, as you could imagine, as somebody who is an advocate of hand sewing, she's a very thoughtful writer. And, you know, it was a great little, like, oh, there was an asterisk at one point where she's talking about the history of clothing and stitching, and she says specifically, the following pages trace the eclipse of hand sewing by the sewing machine with a focus on the United States. There is a much fuller story to be understood, though, by leaning out hand and machine by learning about hand and machine sewing's roles beyond the U.S. Please know that this chapter's narrative is only one piece of a vast, complex global story. And I love that. That's all I want from an author. I don't expect them to be able to tell me the whole story of the entire world. But I do love it when they will tell me their limitations and reinforce their perspective. Because, the perspective that, again, through most of my childhood and most of my adulthood, quite frankly, this perspective has just always, it's never been pointed out. And the perspective that something is written from is so, so very important. Even when we're talking about factual things, things that we consider news level, objective statements and and observations, like those are still clouded by the observer. And I really just want the observer to tell me, hey, this is who I am as the observer. This is who I am as the author. This is where my biases are going to potentially show up, because that also tells me that she is going to be open to receiving, criticism. Like, that's not a bad word. Receiving criticism or receiving feedback about where she might have a blind spot, because that's what a blind spot is something that we're not aware of. And so I really am excited to see that in any text, but especially in a text that's talking about sewing or handcrafts in general. So anyway, I've highlighted several things. I won't read them to you all because you're just going to be like, shush it up. But I've really enjoyed it. Again, I am not in any way, again, most of the book from page 36 on is about the actual nuts and bolts of hand sewing. But I would highly recommend it. If you've been interested, in sewing, but you're just like, that's a hurdle that you're just not ready to jump over, the machine, the cost of a machine, the floor, the actual real estate of a machine in your life. You still have to cut something out, and that's going to take up space if you're making a garment or a larger piece. Excuse me. You're still going to have that, but that's something you could do at once and then enjoy the process of hand sewing, Okay. Should we talk about knitting? That's so silly. So I finished my 75 people told me how to say it. Is Silda Teague's pattern, which is Musselburgh, right? Am I saying? Now I can't even remember what the thing is called. I'm so about the title. But anyway, it's her 2-layer, top to bottom to top again, hat pattern, which allows you to work it at basically almost any gauge, at least, Musselburgh, sorry, at a wide variety of gauges. How about that? And then you turn it inside out on its, or turn it inside on itself. And I made a hat like this, probably not like this. I made a colorwork hat, a stranded hat that I bought as a kit from Schoolhouse Press, probably 20 years ago, at least 18 years ago. And it's the same construction in terms of you're knitting this way. But yeah, it's very enjoyable. This yarn is, I have a bun in, so I have a little bit of a cone head thing happening. But I trust me, it's very cute. It's very cute. This yarn is from Nomadic Yarns, and it's one of her Christmas colorways, and it was the yak base. So I was hesitant. This is the first time I think I've knit with the yak base yarn. So I didn't want to knit socks with it right off the bat, and I did just love the colors. So this is what I made, and it's very soft and very lovely. And the nice thing is about doing a double layer hat like this is that you can knit it at a much looser gauge and still have a nice warm final object. So it's still drapey. It's still going to fold nicely on itself. If you want to wear it as a scrunchy hat, If you want to, you can flip the brim up and have 4 layers on your ears, you know? So you have lots of options. And again, just being able to knit it at a looser gauge makes that pleasant knitting for me. It makes it speedier. It makes it easier on my hands and all that good stuff. So I definitely see myself making some more of those in the future. They work great with self-striping, but they also work great with, you know, any other kind of yarn that you might be using. Okay, so I also showed you last time. What was that? Oh, I did another stitching thing. I forgot to show you. I don't know if you remember, if you've been with me for a while, I started a silly stitchery like in October maybe. I picked it up to work to finish it. I was halfway on this like little rind of the pumpkin, rib of the pumpkin, and I had 2 other ones to do. That's literally all I had to do. It sat in my like little sewing basket thing for like 3 or 4 months. And so I just finished it by, you kind of stitch around the fabric, draw it in, and then just whip stitch down a little felt circle. But yeah, isn't it sweet? And I just used like that fabric solvy stuff where you can print the pattern onto it and then it dissolves away. So yeah, it's very cute on some linen. Ta-da! Okay. Then I have my Dotted Rays. And Dotted Rays is a pattern by Mr. Stephen West. And this is some fun hand spun that was from Bits and Bobs of Into the World's fiber. And so I have about this much left. And this is an enjoyable pattern, man. If you have knit with Stephen West patterns, they are genius. I know that like sometimes his aesthetic doesn't match up with folks, so just get past that, that front photo and look at what other folks have knit with different color combinations and what have you. His patterns are consistently just very cleverly designed and really written for how I like to knit. Okay, so similarly, I would say, is the Stripe Study shawl. And who is that by? I knit a Stripe Study a billion years ago, and it continues to be one of my favorite shawls. The Stripe Study is by Vera Valimaki. It's been out for quite some time now. And it's using 2 colors of fingering weight yarn, just 2 skeins, I believe. And the one I knit was in Sport, and I love it. Like I knit it with hand spun, and then the commercial was like the contrast color of the border and then the skinny stripes. And at first when I made it, it's asymmetrical. So it's like half of it is like a traditional triangle shape, and then the other half is much more of a wing, a longer, narrower triangle. And so when I first made it, I loved the fabric that I had created, but I didn't really like the shape. I was just not, but I have since grown to love the shape because it's one of those things where you just like kind of place it and then just wrap and it stays in place really well, and I love it. So I was going to make a shawl for a friend who is not a knitter, and I asked her to pick the yarn from a photo option, and she chose this hand spun that I had made from Hip Strings, their Warm Winter Mittens colorway. It's 100% Corriedale, and it's one of the mill spun, the mill blended fibers, not spun, mill blended fibers. So it's sort of just like a dark, I would say the overall color is purple, but it has lots of reds and blues and greens in it. But I think as it reads from a distance, sort of as purple. So I decided to make a stripe study with, and of course I'm in the middle of a row because I'm a hot mess. With that and the Harrisville Nightshades, I have left over 2 skeins, well, a skein and almost a full skein of the, is it Insomnia? It's the one with olive in it. And I just love, 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 love this yarn. And I don't know, maybe it's because that's like a DK. So this is basically a DK shawl when it's written for fingering, but I love my sport weight version the mostest. I don't know, maybe it's going to be too thick. I mean, it's definitely not too thick. Maybe it's going to be too thick for like a non-knitter who might be a little confused by this shape. I can't decide. And of course, in the middle row, so you can't see, but it's lovely, isn't it? I think that's pretty good. I think it's going to be fine. It's just very scrunchy, which is very good. She is a friend that I have tried to knit for so many times, and every time I knit for her, I feel like it's like not a very, like it's just not a good thing. Like I never seem to make the thing that I feel like is really, she's going to love. I think it's going to be that way, and then I knit it and I'm like, oh, this is not right for her. And she's so lovely. She would never be like, oh, that's not right for me. But like, do you have anybody like that where you just have tried to knit for them several times and it feels like, just like everything I make for her turns out not to be my best work. And I don't know why. Maybe I need to just make her like 20 things and like something is going to come out of it. But I do love that it has sort of this like kind of stained glass almost effect to it. I don't know, because I guess because of the black as well, and the fact that this color is sort of, it's definitely not iridescent, but because it doesn't seem to be one color but reads kind of from a distance as one color, maybe that's why I feel like it's sort of stained glassy. But if nothing else, it's highly enjoyable to knit. And I will say this, the Stephen West, you do short rows, but you don't need to do any technique. Like you don't have to do wraps and turns. You literally just turn your work because you're using your short rows to make these like holes in the fabric, which are part of the design, which is ingenious. Stripe Steady, she has you do wrap and turns, but you don't have to pick up your wraps because it's just garter stitch. But I have decided on this one to do German short rows because it's a situation where, so there's two ways you can do short rows, right? You can like work all the way to the end, and then the next row you just work 20 stitches from the end, and then you work 10 stitches from the, you know what I mean? Like, or, 20 stitches from there. So you're like coming back. So you like knit over the short rows all at once when you're done with the short row section. There's also the thing where you knit the shortest row first, and then you come back, and then you knit over that short row. And this is the stripe set, or the Stripe Steady, right? No, this is Stripe Steady. The dotted rays is the former, where you're going out, and you're kind of going less far out each time. Stripe Steady is one where you're just doing the short, and then you're going past it each time. So for me, if I'm doing garter stitch and wrapped short rows, it's very easy for me to knit over that wrapped stitch, like without realizing it. And then I'm like 40 stitches ahead, like, oops, I was supposed to turn this thing. So you can totally use a stitch marker, no problem, right? But the thing I like is if you're doing the German short row, it is much harder to just accidentally knit over it because it is like not a regular stitch on your needle. It's like a stitch and a half-ish. So it's much easier to catch if you're a person who just like is watching TV while they're knitting or what have you. So I really enjoyed that on this one quite a bit, more so than fiddling with a marker. So yeah, that's been enjoyable for me. And then very lastly, I have started knitting on one of my Knit Spin Farm self-striping fingering weight, 90% Tarkey, 10% nylon. And this is, I think, a November colorway that was like soupy soup dip bowl. Just this very cute thrifted soup bowl that's in these colors. And I mean, come on, it's perfect, right? Perfect. Get to the sun here. And I am doing, I'm doing the Twizzler sock, which I really love to do. And I believe that is a free pattern on Ravelry. And you know, I've knit several of them. You would think I could remember who the designer was, but I'm pretty much the worst. And so I'm not the worst. My brain just doesn't work that way. Twizzler Socks by Tangled Becca. And it is in fact a free pattern on Ravelry. So yeah. Yay. This one I am doing, I think the pattern normally is 2 stockinette stitches between your slip stitches. And this pattern I'm doing 3 simply because that made the multiple work out, because I'm doing a 76 stitch sock, which it needs a different multiple. So I'm doing a multiple of 4 instead of a multiple of 3. But yeah. Oh, and look at my perfect little stitch marker from Love Kit. She matches so well. You probably didn't see it because the camera didn't focus, and quite frankly, I'm just too lazy to fix that for you. It's LUVKT. Yeah, LUVKT is her Etsy shop. She's Katie, and she does the cutest. My husband brought home some flowers from an errand he was doing, and I got to use my little vase, and it just felt so springy and summery and good. Even though I really don't like the spring and summer as much, it was still pretty and bright and lovely. Okay. I think that's everything. As soon as you leave, I'll remember something we were supposed to talk about, but until then. So remember, if you're a patron and you want a prize, send me an email. If you're interested in a bag, that's going to happen January 1st. If you're holding out for a kitty cat bag, it will be February 15th. Did I say February 1st and then February 15th? I hope so. We'll see. And yeah, I think that's all.